Hello everyone and welcome to my oil painting class. And today we're painting beautiful lilies, water lilies. And actually the Scottish type, I've been told, when I was taking this photograph at the friend's pond. So I'm interested to paint some exciting greens. We've got varieties of greens, yellowish greens, cooler greens, slightly darker and lighter greens, okay? How do we paint leaves separately to the water? How do we paint some of the water reflections? How do we mix our greens? So I'm interested to explore all of this. I also want to check, explore a little bit on my composition. I have a square format, but I also got a couple of lines. That would be probably my rectangular shape, maybe a little bit wider version of it, but I think that was the idea, to have a rectangular format. But I wanted to place my lilies. I think they will be much more stable composition if it would have been a square. So it could be, or we can shrink part of the photograph, or we can expand. That's another reason why I put the lines on my board, just in case if I wanted just a little bit of that extra space. Okay, so in a way I could have even two smaller, if I'll have a very small designs, two versions, one slightly zoomed in and one slightly bigger. Then I can make a slightly larger version of it. So if I plant three of my flowers, so photograph is always my starting point. It's never just a copy, okay? It's something what inspires us, gives us reminders of details, of colors, but never just a copy. So I've got these beautiful three flowers. So I can play with its design, how they're going to be placed. So within the square, maybe I can put one flower. No, it's going to be quite small. Okay, maybe one somewhere here, one somewhere here. Okay, and depending on that, that might just give me, I might even exaggerate the size of my flowers. Okay, what about if I were to put something a bit more lower here? Okay, and that's my second design, and these ones might be just a little bit more close together. I think that would be a little bit more pleasant as well. And then the rest of the leaves are clustered together, okay, somewhere around these areas. So it's almost like a little island, yeah, coming out somewhere here, all together. And then some individual, sorry, my marker pen decided not to paint too much. Draw. Okay, somewhere there. Okay, what about if I were to decide to make a deliberate decision on my leaves going slightly differently? Maybe that will be kind of that direction. That might be interesting. So it kind of widens up the space. We can have some lovely darknesses in here, but all of that space is different in comparison kind of to that shape, okay? So if I would have had a more elongated shape, maybe I would have stretched my flowers a bit further out. So it's my thinking notes, okay? So it's my planning notes, it's my thinking notes. I'm identifying the shapes in a very basic, small design, which gives me an idea of what possible. So I'm thinking now that looks like a better option. So what about if I were to plan this? If I were to start using my felt tip. Okay. Right, let me see if I can grab another one. Looks like this one is running out. Right, so that's might be my direction there. Maybe one, my main flower is going to be somewhere here. Okay, and then these ones will come in somewhere here. Okay, that goes in the shadow. That might be a supportive one. That might be another larger one, maybe a medium size. Maybe this is going to be the larger one. So it's all this analysis and all this comparison is happening before we start working on the actual painting. Okay, all these shadows could come in beautifully afterwards. So I'm not interested in details first. I'm thinking overall, kind of almost diagonally cut, but the three flowers, the lighter tone. No, this leaf at the moment stands out, but by the time it will be, everything's going to be green. It will balance the three. That triangle balances our composition quite well. Okay, might even think of that widening maybe even more. Okay, that's smaller, medium, much larger one. Okay, right, and bearing this in mind, if I keep it somewhere here, we can start doing our sketch. Now on my palette I have some white, cadmium yellow, ochre, magenta or ruby. Any of those ones will be good. Got some violet, slightly different order here. Violet, ultramarine, cobalt blue, or we can have cerulean and emerald green. Okay, again, emerald green, it could be phthalo green, it could be all sorts of that kind of green, which reminds us that ultramarine. Sometimes it's viridian, all sorts of titles for the same green as them. Right, so I'm going to use some taupes and I'm going to sketch with my violet paint. Violet comes up really good against orange. Okay, and today we will be painting with quite a lot of oily surface, with quite a lot of oil on our surface. So violet will be a good supporting color for us. So it looks quite bold and quite strong, but the moment I put it against my orange background, it becomes much more calm and much more natural. Right, so according to my composition design, so can I put that big shape, okay, across somewhere here? So I'm looking at my design, and then we'll look back at my photograph for some more details later on. So let's just look for overall shape here, overall plan. So let's have my flower somewhere here. Okay, again, if I were to plan it, don't go too small, maybe the opposite, deliberately enlarge it. It will be fun to paint a larger flower than quite a small one. If I would have taken a photograph really close to the flower, I wouldn't have seen the other two, yeah? So my photograph is more of an observation rather than a perfect composition. Right, so I've got my triangle here, yeah. Maybe somewhere here. So where this flower is going to be. Okay, and this smaller one. Okay, somewhere there. I quite like putting them in the boxes. It just gives me an approximate size, gives me that's proportion rather than the lovely shape, which I might not like straight away and then start fixing it when I need to focus on other things at early stages. Okay, right, so what else do I need here? Can I start looking for maybe that grouping of my leaves? I can pick up some more exciting leaves or something what's kind of link my flowers to the leaves, or some of the borders of how they're opening up and we see the darker, deeper shadows in the water. So for example, next to this flower, I quite like this leaf. So if I were to add something around it and have it open gently, can do more or less full circle. I'm almost leaning over the pond, so my circles, yeah, if I were to draw my circle looking at the leaves from the top, the moment we're stepping away from it, they will become much more narrower, and the further away we're going to go, they will become ovals. Okay, in our case there will be mainly kind of something in between those shapes, depends how they lean in or kind of popping out from the water. So that's easier to draw a circle first. It actually overlaps with another leaf, so it might not be as big. If I need to wipe my lines, okay, I can use a tissue. Okay, so that's might be one of my first leaves here. And there are loads of overlapping going on, so I don't need to draw full size of it. I'll draw another leaf here. Okay, let's find its shape. Now the leaves will be approximately of a similar size. Of course, some will be slightly smaller, but that's a baby one there, yeah? But the larger, fully grown leaves, they're more or less of a similar size. So when drawing them, just be aware, not going huge differences in sizes, or if you're drawing a larger size, make sure there isn't any more bigger ones. Okay, maybe this one, how it's going to overlap. Okay, you can pick up the leaves you want to include. So for example, I like this turn, so can I pick up a leaf bordering this corner? Okay, maybe another one overlapping. So I no longer will have the lines here. I will have probably the gap and the darkness of the water. Okay. So observing the plants, we're observing the colors. Right, so I've got this one here. If I need to make amendments to my lines, or if I've got a lot of lines, I can make some of them slightly darker. Okay, now our opening the leaf, that split doesn't go further than halfway through. So if this is my circle of a leaf and the halfway through somewhere here, I can't really put a gap in there. There might be a little fold of the green and I might have a slightly different color in there or darkness, but there wouldn't be actually an opening there. Okay, so another smaller one and maybe another full one here. Small one is above, and then this one is above. Okay. And what they also have, they still have a vein halfway through their shape. And that gives us a little bit of the direction or a little bit of how all of these leaves, yeah, the stems will lead under, quite often right under the flower, but not always. Just going to make my flower slightly bit darker as I'm starting to lose its shape. Okay. This flower is probably the largest flower. It's probably just a little smaller when the petals are opened up wide. Probably just a little bit smaller than the circles of the leaves. Perimeter there, right? So I might keep this one. You know what? I might keep this one further in because I do like the idea of showing the gap in the leaf. Okay. So amend and work into my design. Not a set stone. This is our development. Okay. Right, before I finish anything else here, let's pay a little bit of attention to our flowers above. Now, I quite like that one is much more independent flower, yeah. So it's got that almost a cup shape. We are looking down at it, so we do see quite a lot of opening there. Okay, so the petals will come quite open. So I might just give it a bit more of a guidance of what's happens to them. Try not to put too much lines in there because violet is quite a dark color. By the time we paint our white flower, it might be spoiling our white. So try to stay loosely or just suggestive. Right, and in this area, I do like how this flower sits on This leaf, maybe I will make it slightly more of a wider oval rather than of a fuller circle. You can decide if it's not overlapping any other leaves, but for me it does look like it will have to, because I moved the flower a bit, I moved the leaves in different way. Okay, so it might sit on that opening area. There's a nice big shadow from the flower, so it looks like its silhouette is changing. Okay, there might be another leaf further away, maybe small in size. And anything else we can finish? So I'm looking at, there is a nice dark shadow, and there are some lovely lit up areas of the leaves as well. So can I, just looking for the silhouette of the borders of overall paler greens. So that might be a good connection, the borders and the openings here. And then here I can decide how many or how little leaves volume I want to place. Looks like it's quite an overgrown area, so loads of overlapping. So what I will do, if there is a lot of overlapping, I'll try to compare some of the shapes in sizes, and if they're a bit similar, adjust them to a little more variety. So loads of things going on in one go. Okay, we've got that flower here. Maybe another baby leaf. Maybe another one coming from underneath. So when they overlap each other, they don't come in just in lovely, precise order, then the different angles. Okay. I might make this opening. Quite like this shape. Maybe yes, that's the one. There we go. Just a little bit of a crease here, and I might stay with a shadow here somewhere. Okay. Right, anything else? So we have another leaf on the side. There is a darker leaf. I'm not sure if I want to paint it, or if I were to paint it, maybe I will turn it into green. I think it's quite nice that it's dark. I know there's a bit of debris, some dry leaves, something fallen off the tree from above. But let's just place this shape here. Just checking how high it's going to be. Okay, that's more elongated. So by turning my shape of the board into a square, just giving me a little more of that space, and for water, for that's extra stability. I think squares as composition work really, really well. Okay, so that's good be somewhere there. We can do all the texture on them after. Okay, so we have my triangle of light. Okay, And what I also know, this shape looks a little bit kind of symmetrical, partially symmetrical here. But I think what I'm planning, I quite like the bit of turquoise, pale blue light behind the lily, yeah? So reflecting part of the sky. So if I were to break my darker green and the water into this paler blue, I might actually make another. I know this is a debris leaf from a tree, but if I were to add another smaller, maybe somewhere here, shape, I think it might be just enough exciting details there. Okay. Loads of things could overlap here. I think we'll work with that with the paint straight away. So I'm just looking, and my blue could also kind of have something connecting. Okay. Good. Right, gonna do a tiny bit of flower planning on my main lily. If I've done a big shape for it, it doesn't mean that my petals can't go further out from it. Okay, maybe the opposite, the bulk of that shape is here. Okay, so I might just do a little hint of planning. Okay, so it's more open. The petals below, especially closer to the middle, are much more squashed. So instead of doing individual petals, I'm doing overall directions of them. Okay, and the opposite side there, a little bit more open and overlapping there. So I've got an overall directional structure rather than counting and painting every petal. Okay. So we are looking down on this pond. Okay. And I think I'm quite happy with my composition. And let's see what the color brings. Right, for the next stage, I need a larger brush. I'm going to use a flat filbert brush. And I'm going to use my 3 oils together. And I'm going to paint the surface. I want to make the surface quite runny. I might run out of my oil and top it up. And then add some color on top. Now, the areas I'd like to paint runny are my leaves. So if your violet color will run or get smudged, don't worry about it. So maybe try to stay a little bit within the shapes just to keep your outlines. Otherwise, they will start being quite, they will start disappearing. Okay, so all of this area is going to be my leafy surface. I'm going to leave the flowers surfaces out. And for now, I'm going to keep the water as well, plain meaning dry. Okay, so I want to have a little bit of that runniness. Okay, so you might just start seeing a little extra shiny surface on the screen. You might, some areas start looking tiny bit darker. It's just how the surface picks it up. If you don't see any changes, that's fine as well. Okay. If you paint somewhere a bit more of the water, a bit less than you were expecting, that's fine. Don't over worry about it. It's almost our wet on wet technique, like in watercolor. Okay, just to have a lovely playful effect. I'm going to top up my 3 oils as well. I can put my sketch aside now. So when I'm ready and I need more of it, it's here as well. I don't tend to use a lot of it in class when we don't have a lot of runny paints, right? And with the same large brush, I can start mixing my colors. Now, the orange background is really effective for painting greens. If you want to paint anything sunny, no matter if it is lilies or forests or grasses and fields or bouquets of flowers with loads of lovely, exciting greens, yellow, orange, varieties of that combination of orange will be fabulous. Right, so I'm going to go for some white. Now my brush picked up a little bit of violet, but with a bit of white, it will absorb it. Okay, and I want to have some of my cadmium yellow and a small amount of emerald green. I'm only picking up a small amount. Sometimes it's even good to check how much you've got and test it on your palette before you add, because if you add too much, everything will become very dark green very quickly. Okay, so this is quite a bold yellowish green. Okay, on the screen it looks quite yellow. Let me see if I can adjust the camera. Let's keep going. Right, it's a little bit better. Let's get tiny bit more green in my paint mixture just to make it slightly stronger. So I'm looking for green, the most bold light green, okay? Any of those big shapes. Now, because my paint here is reasonably runny, okay? It's not overly runny, but it's not thick paint. And my surface is very runny here as well. If you keep your board on a vertical easel, you might even have some streaks running down. Just play with them, or drop your board a little bit more flatter, just to kind of to work with it. So I'm going to bring some of the strokes in here, and I'm interested to see some of the orange background partially remaining or partially becoming kind of peeping through. Okay, so don't be scared of it's being partially transparent. Okay, it might not be my final color, but I just want to put a little bit of that here. Maybe I'll look for some of the leaves where I've got some bolder highlights. Okay, this one's got quite a lot of light here as well. And these little veins, perhaps if I were to leave them out for now, they will remind me where some of the darkness will come in. Okay, so far I'm just playing with very big shapes and very big strokes of color. Okay, this leaf has quite a lot of light on one side and a tiny bit on the other. Yeah, how the high gaps of the shadow from the trees are picking up that light. I'm just blocking shapes. If my leaves look in some, at some point will look a little bit silly or not quite right, just go with the flow. Don't over worry about it yet. Got the smaller one. Can the smaller one have some lovely soft runny shapes to that? Okay. Now I think my camera still compensates for my green here. It is quite a greenish color I'm placing here. Let's go a little bit deeper. So I'm using the same cadmium yellow and emerald green, just going slightly darker version, so less white, a little bit more pigment from both colors, mainly from yellow. Again, can I add it to my other leaves or parts of them? will be quite exciting to add it to existing color because it will smudge beautifully. Okay. They will smudge beautifully. They will give you some exciting effects. Okay, I think because it's quite a large surface, I'm running out of paint. I tend to put some paint out on my palette, and then when I'm running out, add in some more. Okay, this side got a little darkness, and also perhaps on the sides of the leaves we have a little bit of darkness. So far I'm just playing with a little bit of tone. Okay, I want this leaf to be darker, much more cooler leaf, so I'm going to leave it out still. But anything for this one, just want a little bit more yellow in it. Okay, right, tiny bit more yellow for me for my palette. Oops. I'll need some more fresh yellow for my flowers, so I'll leave it out separately, so it's not going to be contaminated with green. Okay. Right, any other greens in between, any gaps? Perhaps I'll find a little bit. Okay, that's much more transparent green because I think I'm running out of white in my paint mixture, so the color becomes less opaque. I just add a little bit more. Yeah, okay. This lovely little little baby leaf. I think I'm going to keep it slightly cooler green. So if I paint around it as a warmer, well, that's lit up yellowish green. That will be good. Right, this one as well. I'm forgetting that area. Okay, can I add a hint of my magenta to it? Just to make a little bit of extra orangey color to my green. It's not going to make it very dark, so very small amount or a little bit at a time, just to see how it's behaving when you mix the color. Okay, and can I add it now? Okay, so we've got that lovely connection. And can I see any of this color elsewhere? Maybe on the border of this leaf, then I've got a bit of light. Okay. Okay, this leaf is starting to look quite perfectly round. I might gently change its dimensions. Don't want it to be perfectly round. Okay, I think that's darker will be for the back. Okay, that's all good. Maybe slightly darker corner here. So I'm moving from one color to another, to another, to another, to another. Yeah, so this is my color without any of my paler colors. It stands out slightly different on its own. Anymore, so I'm gently adding up that variety. I'm tempting to do a little bit more here. Maybe if I add again a hint more of my magenta. Yeah, that's quite a lovely quality green. Because I use a big brush, just paints very quickly. Loads of reflective surfaces. I can decide if I want a lot of reflections. Probably not. I just quite like a bit more settled reflections. So I'm not painting one leaf, moving on to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. I'm doing a similar color, following the whole picture. Okay, making those connections, making those decisions, how the whole atmosphere of the picture is picking up. Okay. I might need more of this color somewhere else, but for now, I think I'm ready to move to the next one. I'm going to go for even more of my magenta. So start to have more of a browny green, but still quite a lovely color. So might be something underneath here. Maybe another leaf, maybe not quite water before I start painting the water there. Okay, some borders here. Any more darker? Maybe even a hint of violet. I just have a tiny bit more green still, so it doesn't look too brown. So a tiny hint of violet to have a gentle fold within the lily leaf. Okay. Good. In here. Might mix it with some warmer, cooler colors after. Right. And maybe I'll stop for this warmer yellowish and magenta, more of a yellowish and kind of orangey colors. Just gonna check what these shapes look like. Maybe just softening some of them. Maybe a little bit more yellow could come into here, so it doesn't look too white. I think initial shape now I can see is perhaps a little too white, but for the other areas I think I'm okay. Little hints of some texture in there. That runniness of paint makes it quite playful without over doing it. I'm just touching up the areas as I'm looking back, as I'm stepping away, leaning away from my picture and just seeing the overall shapes. To just tidy in some of them and just tiny bit more. So do they read as a unity here together? Okay, that's better. Right. Now let's have a look at some cooler green. Right, so gently clean my brush. So there's still a bit of green on it, but not much. Mainly got rid of all the yellow. So I'm going for my, again, oils, and I'm going to mix another group of greens, lightly separate. So my emerald green is going to be first. If I were to paint just directly with my emerald green, if I just put a mark as a testing color, it will just look dull, but it will be quite nice darkness, yeah? It doesn't look emerald green fresh on the orange background, okay? So it compensates the color, the orange kind of mixes with the green visually, okay? So I can see some of that lovely darkness somewhere here in the water. I probably will add more blue to it even later on. But for now, I think I can work with that. Now, because my background is dry, I will need a little bit more oil just to stretch my color here first. Okay.
Julia,
Mm-hmm.
my emerald green doesn't look that colour.
Is it not?
No.
Is your background quite a dark orange background or quite light?
Medium.
Medium. Right, just add a bit more blue to it.
Cool.
Bit more blue or keep even a tiny bit of violet, yeah? As if you would have been painting on any other surface, and once you add a little bit of white, you'll start seeing much more darker. Mine is just quite playful
Okay.
in its darkness here, but you can see how much more paler that is. Okay.
Oh, that's better.
That's better. Okay, a bit of blue, a bit of violet, fantastic.
Yeah.
Right, I'm going to find a couple of empty spaces. See, in the moment my same color is landing on lighter greens, is no longer as dark. So that's where I might look for support from a blue or violet eventually. But for the moment, I might just paint a little bit of that color still. Okay. Yeah, I think it's picking up a tiny bit of white with green. So I'm going to add a small amount of ultramarine just to continue with that lovely darkness, kind of transparent darkness. Okay. Right. My other part where this darkness could come in is probably going to come somewhere close to little areas here. Might struggle to fit it in yet, as I haven't done some other areas. So you can put tiny little corners, just a little ideas of some of the shadows, or some of the gaps, or some of the overlaps, and we see tiny bit of water somewhere. Also, it would be a lovely color. Again, my emerald green with some ultramarine, or tiny bit of both, tiny bit of violet, only small amount, just to keep that kind of darkness in. As I'm coming close to leaves, it just gets a bit more paler. So I'm thinking of doing my shadows from my lilies, from my flowers on the leaves. Okay, maybe a little bit following some of the petals here, just approximately, just give it, doesn't have to be perfect. I think they're quite runny, these shadows, for now. We'll see, because this area is quite runny, so might not all appear as dark as I want them. We'll see. Okay, but gives us that starting point. And I can also see a slightly darker, cooler, darker corner on the top right corner here. Maybe a little bit of the border of my light reflecting from the sky. Again, I will merge it with my other colors later on. Okay. Right, next I'm going to start adding some white to my emerald green. So if I'll go directly for some white and add to the same paint mixture here, yeah, we can see how much more cooler that color is. It actually brings me much more closer instead of my leaves or my deeper color of the water, some of that hints of blue and turquoise behind my top lily. So I think if I exaggerate its lightness, if you kind of look on the screen here, just about you can see a little bit of difference. So I might exaggerate its darkness. Okay, that's probably quite pale. Let me make it slightly darker, tiny bit more green, and tiny bit more, or cerulean or ultramarine, either will be good. Ultramarine might be slightly darker, so you might want to have tiny bit of white with it. Just painting a big shape, just a little bit around the lily, a little bit kind of chopping into its petals. And as my color is slightly different from my firstly mixed color, it gives me a beautiful variety. So can I make deliberately something more different? Can I add more emerald green on its own without the blue? Okay, I'm not sure if you can see the variety on the screen. Again, I think my camera is compensating that against the orange. And then can I go for a little bit more into the cerulean side? Cerulean and a little bit of extra white. I can go a bit more thickened paint, so it's no longer runny. Okay, that's quite a nice pale blue. Okay, maybe a little darker again. And a little bit less patchy. So if I've got streaks in the paint, I might want to blend that and go with the overall color as a flatter color. We can add more texture to it, perhaps for leaves or flowers, maybe with the water, keeping it a little bit more calmer. Right, and what I want to do next, I want to bring a little bit of warmth to my paint, coming close to the leaves. I also want to smudge some of this area, so I can bring a little bit. Okay, it's overwhelming it quite a lot. So the moment I add white, that darkness disappears. So let's bring a little more of it back from emerald green and ultramarine. Maybe a hint of violet even again. So I want some of it in this corner. I need something darker here before reaching out. I want, the darker leaves. I want a little bit of warmth underneath it. Right, and also spotting a similar color. Some of this darker, cooler turquoise. Perhaps somewhere here. Okay, next to bold yellowish leaves, and it could come closer to my shapes. I made a little bit of extra texture. I'm not sure if that's going to work or not, but I'm experimenting just out of perfect shape of the leaf. I've just done a little more of a dented surface. Okay, making them less perfect and less. Now this shape now looks very dark. Again, I think if I were to add a little bit of my paint to it, you will lighten up. Still see a shadow, but that just cools it, softens down just a little bit more. Keeping it soft and pressing the brush really gentle, so it just smudges a tiny bit at a time. Okay, not sure about that being a line. Gonna smudge this one into a warmer color as well. Quite like that softness. Gonna do similar stuff here. Here now. Okay, it's lifting up quite a lot of darkness. Okay. And perhaps a little bit more somewhere here. You can see little gaps between the trees, branches reflecting in the water. That just gives me an opportunity to see the color. So I don't have to paint exactly the same kind of that light, but it's will start to be playful. Okay. And then I'm ready to add a bit more warmth to it. So this time I'm gonna go for a bit of ochre. And just to add my existing colors. Now ochre has some white already, so it will give me a little bit of warmth, but maybe not that quite exciting transparency. But let's start with that color first. We've got a bit of warmth in the area of coolness there, quite similar in darkness, maybe slightly darker, this new color. I can make it slightly lighter by adding more white. Okay. Just a little more of that warmth. And I think close to my leaves, just going to make sure that my paint does mix well. Some of the strokes came up slightly not well mixed. Okay, that's okay. Any of these. Okay, not quite happy with the shape of the darkness, but I like the grouping of colors. So I can work on the shape, but I'm establishing my colors. Okay, yeah, that's good. Maybe a bit more of that warmth here as well. So I'm looking at color mixing, I'm looking at color playfulness approach. And I think I'm ready for a little bit of extra yellow. Again, back to the same mixture. Yellow will give me that beautiful transparent water feel, the transparency of the water. Okay, so it's not going to be as light as my leaves, but somewhere just under my leaf I might have that connection of light, maybe smaller quantities. I think that's good to go now. It's full darkness. Okay, I can see a little more of that color creeping in of the water, how it will start mingling and blending with my other colors. Well, some more darkness here, so that's all good. Just wanted a little hint of that warmer yellowish color. as a little sparkle within the water. Okay, let's just get better strokes so they a bit more softer together. Okay. And I'm happy to bring some more of the darkness back. Now, if I use my current color on my brush, I have quite a lot of white, yellow in it. I'm going to spoil my shadow. So perhaps I'll be patient and come back to it a little bit later. And I want to have a bit more coolness to paint on my leaves here. So I want that connection of cool green on my leaves. So I'm gonna go back to my emerald green. Perhaps with a bit more magenta. Okay, I'm just running out of my oils. So my pot's getting empty and it gets mucky as well. So I tend to use a tissue before I top it up. I'll clean it up and then fresh oil could be poured in. Keeps my colors more fresher. Gives my brush that opportunity to stay cleaner in color. Again, it's not perfectly clean, it's just to take the edge off. Okay. So here we go. So my emerald green, magenta or ruby. Okay. Let's just test the color, how dark it looks. I want to have a look at this area. Okay, perhaps next to the lily, it could have that darkness and that coolness. But further away to the border, okay, actually might be even more. I need a little bit more yellow into that. And magenta to have it more of that orangey color. If I need a hint of white to see the colors better. Okay, that's quite light. And I've lost the green here, so let's add more green. Takes you longer to mix colors. Don't rush yourself. Maybe stop the video, maybe keep on playing, seeing what's going to happen, or just continue mixing your greens. Okay, so that's better, but maybe this inner color might need to have extra darkness. Okay, but what about this corner? Tiny bit more darkness as well. From magenta, from a little bit of ultramarine addition. Okay, that's better. Got more of a leafy color in comparison to the water. I've got that warmth into that, but it has got different properties within that green. And when my paint collects at the root of the brush, I tend to press on the roots and kind of squeeze the paint out, and then mix it well again. And reuse the paint as well. Right, so let's have a look at this one. With a lighter shape, left it light, not sure now how it was, so it feels better with a smaller volume of light. Okay. My small leaf got a lot of reflections in it on the photograph. I want to keep it slightly darker, maybe with a little hint of reflection later on. But it just gives that lovely depth. Okay, where this depth is going to be here. Okay, I think I'm ready for slightly more. Don't want it to be as dark as the shadows, this leaf color. Okay, and again, some highlights will come in later. If I'm overlapping, got overlapping leaves, can I just vary the contrast or in color or in darkness? Again, these are a bit bordering, so can I do anything about it? Maybe one will have more of a lit up corner. Not hugely, but a little variety would be good. Okay, keep on going. Need a bit more of my magenta. And the further we're going into the painting, the more we're covering the surface, the more your piece developing, the less you will start looking at the photograph. You will start looking for elements you might need information from, but your painting will start giving you suggestions itself. Yeah, you comparing the shapes next to each other. You see how the colors interact together. Okay, just want to blend this corner less detailed and perhaps bring tiny bit more connection of color back. Quite like some of the orangey still borders left, but also part of them might be going, and a slight change of color. Right, let's add this one more of a blend in the center, so then we'll see some water. Right, I think I need some darkness in there and expand this darkness as well here. Right, this leaf, I nearly forgotten about him. All right, so I'm adding a bit more emerald green and ultramarine together. It's still got some warmth in it, so it's not just pure coolness. Okay, maybe just stay with the overall shape first and introduce that highlight later. But some lovely qualities of runny oil separates the pigment, kind of the orangey streaks, how they starting to blend gently, run gently. Okay, so that's might be my little extra space here. Right, what's happened here? Anything else I haven't painted quite yet from the leaves? Yeah, it's quite lovely, that glow of orange around it as well. Okay, this one now against the very dark surface is very glowy. And so is this. So I think I can get away with this one now. But for here, I think I'm going to tone it down gently. Okay, more yellow, less green. Can leave the highlight on the corner. Any other highlights here? Yeah, so one shape. Any of this paler color could come on here. It's softer. That's why we've got this lovely runny colors. Right. Slowly getting there. And let's add some more blues, the darker blues. Right, just touching up a couple of darker silhouettes and come back. I wipe my brush, so again there is not much of the highlights from white and yellow, so I'm looking for more of the ultramarine and emerald green. Can even have the ultramarine dominating. Okay, and I'm still working with my large brush, so I'm not over planning, over painting the details. Right, and I want that darkness somewhere here in the center. Okay, it is a center, so it's not a hugely dark space on the photograph, but to have that center holding our interest point, I think that's will be quite a nice connection, and I will blend it out in a bit. Just want to block some of my paler oranges or paler greens. Okay, maybe will be a little gap here. I want it slightly darker, but maybe not overly dark, right? But here definitely much stronger, even a hint of violet if my green is too dominant and I can't repaint it. Then I can use some violet on top and it will compensate, it will neutralize that solid green. Let's find any shadows, little corners. I'm kind of looking for the spaces where some possibilities of those shadows could be. Okay, maybe a little more opening as a little tab. Maybe a little more sharper space here. Can it be somewhere in the corner? Perhaps a shadow, perhaps the depths of the water. Okay. That's the one. That's a nice big light block there. Need to make a lovely shadow into that. So it looks quite perfect first. Okay, so I'm finding it's opening, and then if I wipe my brush, take most of the paint off, and then just use the paint on the surface just to soften its presence, smudges, and give us that beautiful shadow in a much more natural way. Okay, if I wanted to put a little more highlight there, or maybe stretch this color a bit further, might be quite a good idea. Showing the flatness of the pod. Okay, don't like that bit, so let's flatten it up. Maybe a little more flatter shapes here. Again, depending on your painting, you might not need doing those things, but look how exciting it's become. I've got a flat color, so the leaf kind of surfaces, the flats of it is slightly varying. It becomes quite exciting to see that. Okay, it's gone a bit too far. Okay, anything else? Quite like this one is almost closed, almost just not seen any spaces around it. Right, I think I'm ready for my darker blues in this corner. So I need a bit more oil here. And I'm gonna go directly with ultramarine. There's enough green to kind of mix with my ultramarine and still make green. Right, so I want something coming up a bit more here. So I'm gonna go for playful stretch of paint. I like these directions, so maybe I'll go with some of that direction as well. A little bit more paint. Right, if I pour some more oil or even use a tiny bit more tips, I just want to get almost to the base of my orange background. That's better. So it's kind of dilutes it, becomes less thicker paint in this area. Okay, I'm not there yet, but the darkness is appearing nicer. Okay, and I want this paler color eventually to come over as well. So far I'm just aiming for my range of darker blue, maybe a hint of it somewhere here. Okay. Good, we're getting there slowly. Maybe this one will merge more. And I do want that paler blue coming up on top again. So cerulean blue, a little bit of white. Again, there's a lot of green going on. So that will mix probably enough. There was a little reflection on the water. Just want to have more different strokes rather than the two repetitive strokes. If I've got two similar size here, might be less effective, maybe more of a shape here. Finger painting is good too. Okay, that's good. Want to see that depth of the water of the pond. A little more light somewhere here, just a little fresher color. Okay, that's looking quite good. Because of my direction of my strokes, the surface start reflecting differently on the camera. Okay, that's a better direction. And I want a tiny bit of that light somewhere here as well. Now, we haven't done any of our whites, so the reflective paler blues kind of semi-compensating. So I might just stop with my greens and those paler blues before I introduce the stronger greens. Could see a little bit more warmer or lighter. Still feels a little more something. Okay. Not sure what that is. Maybe a reflective surface, maybe something else. Right. And I have not painted a tiny corner here as well. So let's just block it in with anything. That might be quite a bit of water here. That's quite nice, that blue stroke. I wasn't planning it to be so blue. Maybe that will still work as a darker shadow. Again, any of my darker greens from emerald green, blue, bit of violet. I think it does work, that lovely dark ultramarine. Partially as a connection to water, partially as a shadow. I've lost the outer line of my baby pod, but I can come back to that. Mhm. Any other little highlights anywhere on the green? I know I can still come back, but also I'm planning how the highlights on the leaves. I'm going for white, bit of yellow, whatever left of paler green here on the palette. I want to see how those highlights will start supporting my flowers. It's a little more of a highlight on the border. Okay, that's too bright. Maybe okay. Maybe we'll just. Maybe we'll just work here enough. On the wet surface of the oil painting, those shapes, those merges become wonderfully exciting. Okay, I'll stop there. Some other shape might be there. Without us knowing too much about it. Okay, something's happening there. Bright. Okay, the moment I have white on my brush, it does affect the greens. So I'm going back to a less opaque color. Okay, that's it for now. And let's start thinking about our lilies, our white, beautiful flowers. Right, so now I'm picking up different size brushes, getting smaller and smaller for my lilies. So I probably will start with a bigger one for big shapes of the petals, maybe use the next one for some of the highlights of the petals, and maybe the yellow for the yellow, sorry, the smaller brush for the yellow. Right, so fresh oil here. Let's pick up some white. Now we have got our surfaces still bold orange, so it means that if we were to bring some diluted white, it will not look like white. Okay, it already will give us a hint of color behind it. So I know it's harder to see against my white palette here, but if I were to bring maybe on the larger petals starting first, if I'll bring a bit more runnier strokes, and actually I don't think you can see as much, but my violet from my lines has come and mixed with my white. Luckily, I haven't mixed as much green yet. What I will need to do, every time I pick up a bit of green, I'll need to wipe it off on my tissue. So my plan is to start with slightly outer layer and almost like clean the surface in preparation for the fresher strokes to come in. Okay, they're smudging, they're actually quite nice purpley ones. If they not picking up your violet, don't be scared of adding a very, very small amount to your white. Okay. Actually, when you mix your violet with white in a very, very pale version of it, it looks quite pinkish, quite purplish, quite exciting. So let's get some of these shapes. So not to worry that they're not fresh white yet. I'm building up an outer layer. Looking for the widths of the petals. For their direction. If, as I said, the green smudges in. Okay, maybe some of these ones slightly wider, but I think it might be working for now. Okay, don't be scared of leaving little corners of orange left. You don't have to paint it all perfect. This one looks quite nicely smudged. I think that's meant to be my shadow from the green, so I think I'll come back with a greeny blue and paint. Now I can see that's my shadow. I can make it slightly bigger. That was definitely not my petal. Okay. Quite like that this corner is slightly smudged. We've got that softness to it. Okay, now before I do any fresher whites here, it's quite nice as a build-up of the middle. I'm gonna go for my tiny brush and add some yellow. Now the yellow will have to come with a small amount of white, otherwise we'll lose the yellow against the dark orange. Okay, and again, this could be quite runny. Outer middle part is looking slightly lighter. Okay, I can wipe my brush now on my tissue, just wiping it all off. I'm gonna add some fresh oil. Okay, that's just smudging, it's a runny oil. Just gonna blend it all in here. I will put some a little bit more thicker strokes as well. But so far I'm just planning overall look. Okay. Can I do some of this yellow here as well? Can I do some of that one somewhere here as well? And then if I need it a little bit thicker, I can use my magenta, my ruby, whichever color you have. I think that will give me a little thicker strokes and also tiny bit more contrast for some of the inner petals, yeah, it almost brings us to similar orangey color we have, well, as I have on my board, but it mingles it slightly differently. Okay. So we have overall slightly darker white, a bit of yellow, but not quite perfectly bold and exciting, but that some of the depth is there. Same we can do for our smaller flowers. So I'm back to my off-white. So I'm planning my strokes next to the water perhaps first, a little bit at a time, so I can constantly pick up clean color on the border. It's lovely mini crown range of the petals. Okay, something lower here. It's probably will have to go over my green. Let's see how that will smudge. It doesn't matter if it's slightly greener or slightly darker. Just add more white and maybe a bit more of that pink. It will bring you back to that violety color. Compensate the color for the green. Okay, maybe tiny bit back to my violet. Only talking about small changes. Because without it, if I were just to put some fresh whites, nothing's gonna happen. I need to have some backup. I'm gonna go for a tiny bit more violet for the lower levels, for the lower petals. Okay, maybe even more darkness here. And if I were to pick up tiny bit of my green here, that will be even better as well because it's in the shadow. Okay, that's come out too dark. That's too light. Yes, so almost my shadows are done. Some of the shadows from a bit of pink and violet, maybe more pink, would have tiny bit more of that darkness. Okay, that's not enough. Again, that little fine change. Okay, for now. Let's have a look at this one now. Okay, maybe a tiny bit more here as a, that's it. Right, and this one will have more petals showing at the back. They're pointy corners just about to start opening up. And on this side, there will be much more smudged first, and we'll have some extra white edited here. Okay, tiny bit more of a shadow. My pinky purple. Tiny bit again more. Yeah, I like that. I quite like that. Can I add it somewhere here as well? It just smudges into white and gets lost. Okay, it's a bit better. Okay. Can I do a little shadow on this one? Yes, that's better. Could have been a cooler shadow, but I think while I'm working with these violets, I think they're doing a good job. Some on the tips, some of it just in the corners. Okay, so I'm quite happy with this one. I don't know if I want to add much to that. It's quite exciting shape. Right, for the others, I want to have more fresher white. I enjoyed using this size brush for the petals, so I think I'm going to carry on with my white as it is. I need a tiny bit of oil because my white paint is quite thick, but I'm mainly going to be using the white and that just a little softer paste so I can actually handle the paint. You can see it's a bit crumpy, kind of little lumps. So once I soften that, my paint is ready. So if yours is a little bit softer, you might not need much oil. Right, so let's add some whites. They're quite delicate whites, so it will be mainly suggestions of highlights and a direction rather than painting. Oh, I need to paint around this petal, or I need to do a specific border. Okay, I've got one petal standing out, maybe a little dot. Yeah, they're a little bit too similar. Can I merge it with something else? Okay, could it be something from coming a glow from underneath? Okay, a little something there. Okay, I think that might be enough again. Perhaps I will add a dab of darkness next to it using my blue or green or a bit of both to offset its lovely light. Just gently supporting it. Okay, and then just perhaps smudging it. As that border. Okay, that's good. And any more fresh white? I know it's not quite there in the photo, but again, I just redirect that light here. That's better. A tiny hint of white on this flower. I know I said I like it as it is, but I think that's will make it staying brave is rewarded. Okay, and anything else for this one? Now I've got some nice light. We've got open light on the larger petals on this side. And as they go, right, I need to mix my paint again. It's too lumpy. Okay, I want to get rid of some of these orangey gaps as well. Okay, this one's gonna come in over. Keep topping up my white. If I need to, I wipe it off as well, kind of have a cleaner version. Okay, maybe some of these corners will have tiny bit of light as well. And I'm again looking at my painting, at my flower now. There is a support as a photograph, but I'm working with my picture. So if I don't need to do all the petals, I wouldn't do them. Okay, painted a little bit more of the yellow than I wanted. I can always add a bit more. Okay, that's quite nicely suggestive. That could be a little layer here. Okay, and perhaps just to redirect the petal shape. Okay, now I could be tweaking it forever, but we don't want that. We want that decision of when do we stop, how much do we paint, how much do we leave to imagination. Okay, I'm just gonna have another one here. I'll touch it up tiny bit with my yellow. Now my fresher yellow, so white and yellow together. Okay. So perhaps tiny bit wider that orangey section, but not over too much. That's good. Tiny, tiny, tiny bit more. Maybe a little highlight of that yellow. And for the big flower, tiny bit more darkness. It's quite a lot of white paint in the center, so if I'll go for stronger pigment and just leave it there. Okay, that's better. Let's get in there. Okay. Nice and exciting. And then I'll leave the painting. I will let it kind of sit in my studio for a day or two and see if any highlights need to be edited. I think feels like I could do with something paler here. Brave. Remember when I was talking about connecting the white on the water with the white on the flowers? I think that might be my merging color here. I just need to find that blend, and sometimes that playfulness takes a little bit of time. Okay, and that brave decision making, I hope it will never stops you giving it a go. If you want to do any stalks for the flowers, just be extra careful. I can see a couple of lines. I'm going to go for my darker greens, green, blue, violet, and I'm going to be stopping there. So it might be just a little hint of a line. Okay, it's not quite, not too sure if I like that. Looks like it's standing out of the water. Can I smudge it on one side, or can I make it a bit more paler? That still doesn't work. Yeah, so if it doesn't work, I might not have any, yeah, or might have it a little bit more sharper under the flower, and then that's better. And then smudge it further away as it's going under the water. Same perhaps if you wanted to have another, almost like a line going under the water there. Yeah, another flower perhaps. Might be something else you might spot. Tiny bit paler. Okay, just kind of there, but it's not overly perfect. So tiny little tweaks could be done, but overall I'm quite happy with that new light, and now the flowers are in place and supporting these beautiful leaves, that gorgeous, gorgeous warmth, and happy pond, happy Scottish lilies. Thank you very much for painting with me today. I hope you had fun. Keep on working when you've got time, and I look forward to seeing your paintings in progress or finished whenever you're ready. Thank you very much.